Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and all the ships at sea. Hello, this is George Spalding. I'm the Executive VP at Pink Elephant, and you are attending part one of the DevOps webinar that is Essential Practices 1 through 8. So we list 15 essential practices in our full DevOps Essentials class, which lasts 3 days. And this is a 30-minute webinar, so it's obviously going to be a drastic reduction in the amount of detail that we go into. So I better stop talking and I better get started. So here we go. So what is this DevOps thing anyway? Well, this is Gartner's view of it, and there's several definitions out there, all the way from Wikipedia to Gartner to, Wikipedia to Gartner. So DevOps, it represents a change in the IT culture. I think that's important to note that that's the first line in the definition. It's a change in culture. It's about rapid IT service delivery, and I think that I don't like that word rapid because, yeah, sure, speed is great, but what it really means is that we deliver the services when the customer needs them and when the customer wants them, not when we want them in IT, but when the business or the customer wants them. That's when we do it. And we use Agile and Lean to pull that off in the context of a system-oriented approach or systems thinking, which actually comes out of Lean. DevOps emphasizes people and culture, seeks to improve collaboration and communication between ops and dev, but also security enters into that picture as well. We'll talk briefly about that. And of course, DevOps implementations utilize automation, but I think it's important to note that I believe that true automation in the world of DevOps, which I think is great, and which is what I call full DevOps, the full stack of DevOps, where you start with culture and people and you move up to processes and practices, and then you move up again to technology and automation. So now the question is, well, can I start with automation? No is the answer. You can't start with automation. Automation is the culmination, if you will, of having the process, having it be mature, having it be predictable, having it be repeatable. Now I can automate it. So therefore, that's automation is actually almost a maturity level where we basically say, okay, we're mature enough that we can now automate. And the goal, of course, is that this becomes a very programmable, very, in this case, cloud-centric and dynamic infrastructure. So we're going to talk about ITIL briefly. We're going to talk about Lean briefly. We're going to talk about Agile briefly. And they all basically have the same goal. When you get rid of all of the books and the text and everything else around them, they really all have the same goal. ITIL, Lean, Agile, DevOps, they're all basically saying our major goal, our impetus, our focus is delivering value to the business. Period. That's it. So they share, absolutely 100% share. Nothing weird here. I'm not doing anything. Oh, he's reaching. Nope, I'm not. Basically, they share this one single goal, which is our goal is to deliver value to the business. Now, we're now breaking up value into 3 elements that we consider important. Quality, which is basically saying things don't break, we go in the first time, we don't have waste of rework or errors and things of that nature. And speed and cost. Well, so what are the big, who focuses on quality? Well, ITIL focuses on quality a bit. Lean totally focuses on quality. That's what Lean's all about, is quality, 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 because the belief is with Lean is that if you focus on quality, all the rest will take care of itself. If you basically say, because I think a lot of us in IT have this trade-off that we basically have, which is, should I make it as good as I know I could, or should I make it as good as I know I can do by the end of tomorrow? So I think the idea is that in the world of Lean, that decision is already made. You make it as good as you can. And the end of tomorrow, don't worry about it. because yeah, you'll go long and it'll be long in the short term, but in the end you'll get that time back because you won't have any mistakes, you won't have rework, you won't have errors. Because in IT, we seem to never have time to do it right and always have time to do it over. And all of us listening to this have had the same thought. Why do we do it like this? This doesn't make any sense. We know what's doing it right would do. We know it, but we're getting pressure to do it differently. So Lean says, no, don't worry about it. Do the quality. Make the decision about quality. Everything else will be fine. Speed. We need to pay attention to the fact that time is one of the things that people really stare at IT and talk about. They talk about time. They say, why does IT take so long? Why does IT take so long to do X or Y? Or why does this happen? Why is that? Speed is something we need to start paying more attention to. Time, in general, something we need to pay more attention to. Now, if we have quality already decided, yeah, guess what will happen? It'll take a minute. It's not going to be in the short term, but it'll take a minute. We'll get a lot faster, because we will not suddenly have all of our time taken up with all this extra work, which is known as fixing the stuff that we put in last week or last month. And what about cost? Well, while ITIL talks about making sure that cost is transparent and that people look at it and will know the cost, Lean says, don't worry about cost. If you worry about quality, you won't have to worry about cost. That's what Lean actually says. It has nothing, there's nothing in Lean that focuses on cost. There's a lot in Lean that focuses on quality. So the basic belief in Lean is if you make it as good as you possibly can and you eliminate waste and you eliminate errors, don't worry, the cost will be just fine. So here we go. So we're talking about ITIL, Lean, and Agile leading into DevOps. And these are prerequisites, really, for having DevOps, having a successful DevOps environment in your organization. These are prerequisites. Plus, we need a little bit of security involved in this as well. So we'll get there. So aligning yourself around true north values by defining voice of the customer. This is out of Lean. So the true north value, what does that mean? It means that everyone in the entire organization knows why we're doing this. My favorite story, and you can look it up on the web, is where John Kennedy, when he was president, was touring the NASA facility. Of course, he had his inauguration speech talked about by the end of the decade we will put a man on the moon and bring him back safely. So he was touring NASA, 62 or 63, somewhere in that neighborhood, and he ran into a janitor. And he said, "Hello, sir, and what do you do here at NASA?" And the janitor looked at him like, "Oh, well, what's the matter with you? I'm helping to put a man on the moon." That couldn't be a better answer in terms of true north, because that's what every single human being at NASA in the end was doing, was trying to put a man on the moon. That's a true north value, and that's a great story about it. Okay, voice of the customer, what does that mean? It means, who's your customer? Oh, let's say I'm an airline. Okay, it must be everybody who buys a ticket. Well, yes, but are they all the same customer? If I'm a frequent flyer and I fly 75,000 miles a year, do I have the same opinion of what I consider valuable as Joe and Margaret taking the two kids to Disney World once in April? I don't think so. I think Joe and Margaret want the cheapest possible ticket they can get so they can spend more money at Mickey Mouse. Whereas a frequent flyer cares about upgrades and amenities and leaving on time and no connections and those kinds of things. Very different customers, or personas is what we call them in the world of marketing. So even though they're both customers of the airline, what about pizza? If I'm a guy who eats pizza 3 nights a week and I order online from Domino's or Pizza Hut, am I the same kind of customer as somebody who goes, "Hey, maybe we should order a pizza"? No, I'm a different customer. I want you to remember what pizza I ordered. I want you to remember my address. I want you to remember my form of payment. I want to basically get a pizza in my house after 3 clicks on my phone. That's what I want. That's different. That's a different definition of value from one customer to the next. So I really need to figure out what that value is for that customer and what they're willing to pay for. That's what lean is telling us. And then when we finally get this list of things that is considered valuable, I want the customer to actually prioritize the list. I want to know from the customer, and it's the only way I'm going to get this is from the customer. By the way, I didn't say it, but who decides what value is? The customer. With the times when IT says, "Oh, I know what they need," they don't know what they need. I know what they know. No, they do know what they need. They know what they consider valuable, and that's the only way you're going to find out is to ask them. So we want the must-haves. What is critical to quality? This is a lean term. What's critical to quality versus a nice-to-have? So because we're going to spend the money and focus our efforts on the must-haves, and if we can throw in a nice-to-have, great, but as long as it's not a big deal because the customer is saying, I won't pay for that. I don't consider that important enough for me to pay for. Okay, so identifying constraints and bottlenecks with lean value stream mapping. Once again, we're still in lean. So what's a value stream? A value stream is simple. It's basically the transactions, all the different steps that need to take place between the beginning of a process, if you will, and the end of a process. So it could be just one process. It could be multiple processes strung together end to end. But the point is that at the beginning, the customer says, hey, I think I'd like one of those. And at the end, the customer has it. And they're using it in production, in real life. So that's the whole value stream. There's a lot of pieces in the middle of all that. And it turns out that sometimes some pieces are faster than other pieces. So we now start talking about something called the theory of constraints. Dr. Eliyahu Goldratt, this is back in the mid-1900s, the 1950s, 60s, wrote the theory of constraints. And basically, you already know what it says. It says that no process or complex system can be any more efficient than its slowest part or its weakest link. So in other words, there's always, no matter how many steps there are in the process, one of them is the slowest. Always. So the other piece of this is, well, therefore, okay, so we should fix the slow one, all right? And that's what the value stream mapping process is actually about. But the important part is to recognize that no amount of effort should be expended fixing anything in the value stream that isn't the bottleneck. In other words, don't waste time. If process step 26 is the bottleneck, is the slowest piece, that's where we should be focusing our efforts, our time, our money. If process step 21 happens to be kind of a fun thing to work on, we shouldn't be working on it because 26 is the one with the bottleneck. So the idea here is always focus on the bottleneck until it isn't the bottleneck anymore, until it isn't the slowest part anymore, and then turn your attention to the one that is the slowest. It doesn't take too long to speed things up. Lean talks about the fact that we basically can have only 3 types of work, 3 types of activity. And those activities are value add. This is the good stuff. This is stuff where the things that we're working on add value in the eyes of the customer, what we call value add activities, value add work. Next comes necessary non-value add. Now, these are things when the customer looks at it, they go, I don't think that's that great a deal. But we know we have to do it. We know we have to do accounting, IT accounting. We have to keep track of the money. We have to recruit people. We have to train people. These are all things we have to do. It would be crazy to think we could do it. We could do IT without it. But the business, the customer says, well, that's not that big a deal for me. Then there's non-value add. This is the bad stuff. This is waste. This is stuff that nobody should be doing, and we should try and get rid of as much of it as possible. So here's what a value stream map looks like, where we're laying out all the different steps. And of course, this could be 10, 20, 50 steps. We we lay it out, and it's not a theoretical exercise, because once we put it out on a wall, we basically get the people in to say, hi, do you do this process? Yes, we do. Do you do this? Okay, let me introduce you to the concept of value stream. Okay, boom, 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 process, then process, then process, then handoff and handoff. Okay, now I want you to look at this, and I want you to go to your part of it and tell me whether all the steps that you actually do are in there, because this is a reality-based exercise. I need every single step to be represented on this value stream map. And then I find out how long each step takes, and then I find out how long we wait between steps. Now, what would we be waiting for? Waiting sounds like a terrible idea. Well, we're waiting for a lot of things. We'll get to that later. So the idea is that I get a very realistic picture of how the value stream / processes look right now, what we're actually doing. And you'll be amazed, once it's on the wall, people look at it and go, whoa, we really need to fix this or something like that. Because what they're basically looking at is, they immediately say, wow, that's just nuts. We have to basically be able to fix that. Okay, so lean process optimization. We're eliminating waste. So here's what lean considers wasteful. There's a clever acronym that we use, TIMWOOD. TIMWOOD-U. Transportation, inventory, motion, waiting, overproduction, overprocessing, defects, and non-utilized talent. So transportation, of course, just means moving things around. In the world of manufacturing, that makes sense. It does make a little bit of sense here. Inventory actually is something that makes a lot of sense. So we don't want an inventory of raw materials up in the front of our car production line, and we don't want an inventory of completed vehicles at the other end of our production line. We want, basically, we don't want inventory of incidents coming into the organization, big stack of incidents. That doesn't do us any good. We don't want incidents that have been resolved just sitting there waiting for other action. We don't want changes to be a big stack of those. We don't want projects, a backlog of projects. We don't want inventory. We want things to flow. We want things to move. Motion is how much activity is involved in the day-to-day action. That means that it's additional motion. That if we organized our office differently, or we organized our communication protocols differently, there would be less motion. Waiting time is the biggie. Waiting time, what are we waiting for? We're waiting for approvals. That's the number one thing we wait for, is approval, some sort of authorization to go ahead with whatever step that I'm waiting on. The other thing we wait for, it turns out, is resources to become available. So I've got an expert, I got a guru, but it turns out that the guru, without intentionally becoming this, is actually becoming a bottleneck, because the guru has to touch every project, and it's the people doing the project that are making that happen, not the guru saying I have to touch that. No, it's them all saying, oh, I want Bill to look at it. I want Bill to look at it. So I'll wait. Wait, terrible idea. Overprocessing. Overproduction just means making too many. Overprocessing means I'm going to give you things you didn't ask for. I'm going to give you features you didn't ask for. Terrible idea. The business basically, why don't you want to give them a wow factor? They will say wow every time you give them exactly what they asked for and you give it to them on time. That's what they'll say wow about. Finally, defects and rework. This is the worst possible thing that we can do, and we do it all the time. It turns out that 80% of the incidents in most organizations are caused by failed changes, so we do it to ourselves. For whatever reason, we keep doing it to ourselves, and I've had one organization tell me that 96% of their incidents actually resulted from bad changes. They did a study. Finally, non-utilized talent. What happens when I got these super duper gurus, the network god, the Unix guru? What happens when they're not doing that? What happens when they're not doing network god stuff and Unix guru stuff? Are they sitting on their hands, or do they pitch in, or do they have other capabilities? What's the scoop? Because what we're really looking for now in today's world are T-shaped skills. Deep skills in one area, but a wide breadth of skills in others. Other forms of loss of variation. where basically where variable customer demand makes it very difficult to eliminate waste and very difficult to achieve flow. And finally, Muri, which is overburden and inflexibility. So you can handle 17 incidents a day. So I'm going to see if I give you 26 incidents, will you be able to handle those? Why would you think I would be able to handle those if I could only do 17 a day? I don't know. So I push and you work long and you work overtime and you work on weekends and you do this and you start to get tired and you start to burn out and you start to make mistakes, you start to slow down. Overburdening does nothing. We need a sustainable pace in the world of IT, something that not every leader is in tune with. Inflexibility is all about what I call policy enforced waste, which is simply, and we'll just leave it at this, we'll call it approvals. And there's never going to be fewer approvals. There seems to always be more layers of approval. Okay, visual management. Basically the simple idea that things are better if you can see them. So visual management involves using visual controls in plain sight rather than text-based reports, where it's easier to interpret them, they're simpler, and it's easier to keep it in the forefront of your mind. So we call this a Kanban board. Kanban is a Japanese word. This is out of Lean. Kanban is a Japanese word that means billboard. And each step in the process has a to-do phase, things that and then a doing, what I'm working on, work in progress, and then I'm done. Okay, now let's look at that in a little more detail. So what we're going to describe is what we call a pull system. So you can't you can't work on your stuff until it's finished the step before you. And when it's finished, it goes in the done pile and you pull it from the one person's done pile. You work on it, then you pass it into your done pile, and the next step in the line pulls it from you. As opposed to push, which is basically a concept where if you build it, they will come. So you're basically saying, okay, I'm going to build 100 cars today. I don't know why I'm going to build 100 cars today because we only have orders for 50 cars, but I'm building 100 cars. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Not in the way that Lean thinks. Lean thinks if you have orders for 50 cars, then make 50 cars. That's the way Lean thinks. So this is what we call a Kanban board. So notice that there are different steps in the processes here, different stages in the process. That's fine. Now notice that we have these little numbers up on top. Those little numbers are what's called the work in progress limit, the WIP limit or capacity of that step. So now here we go. Here's the backlog or inventory of things that we'd like to do. They're in priority order. Whoop, sorry about that. So they're in priority order. So the top one here is the most important one that hasn't been selected. So the things that have been selected are here. And notice in this, don't pay any attention to these labels. It's important. That's just a step. So this step has the ability to do 3 things at once. It's only working on 2. So we will pull this guy down there and work on 3. We've got 1 in the done pile. We move over to the next step. They can work on 4 at once. They're working on 3, so they pull this one and put it down there. Now they're working at full capacity. They've got 1 in the done pile. Now we go over here to the next step. We can work on 3 at once. We are working on 3 at once. We have nothing in the done pile. We can't pull anything because we are at full capacity. This is our work in progress limit. Now let's go over here to the last step. We're only working on 1 thing, even though we have a capacity to work on 3 things. We have 1 in the done pile, and pretty soon this guy's going to be moved over here. Man, we're going to be in trouble because there's nothing for us to do. Guess what this represents? This represents a bottleneck. So it's visual. All you can, if this were on the wall of a significant size, you wouldn't have to read any of the words. You could squint your eyes and you could see that big open space means we have a bottleneck in our process and we should be focusing on it. Visual management. We can see it. Okay, Agile, project management, and Scrum. Okay, let's keep going. So what we're now talking about here is traditional waterfall project management. So what that means is this. So in the traditional waterfall, I do all my requirements planning up front, and then I basically come up with a plan. I design from that plan. I build from that design. I test that build, and I deliver my tested project. It is production ready. Okay. The problem, of course, is this length of time could be 6 months, could be 12 months, and I still only have time to do a scope. I only am able to define my scope of project one time. The worst thing that happens is something in here where we say, oh, I have an idea, I have a change. In other words, what we call scope creep, and that's the worst possible thing that can happen in the waterfall method. Okay, so now let's go to a different way of looking at project management, agile project management. Completely different, totally different. It says we're going to do this in pretty short iterations. It could be 2 weeks long, could be 4 weeks long. But the point is that after every iteration, we're going to give the customer a chance to look at the scope of what we've created. So we're going to end, the other goal is, so we've locked the scope for that little short period of time, and we've locked the time. We're going to deliver in 2 weeks. Period. We're going to deliver it in 2 weeks. Now we give them this. And they say, well, it's not what I had in mind. I think that could you take the hand down from in front of the face? I think this is going to be a painting about a woman smiling. Up, sure, says the developers, no problem at all. Okay, so now we do the next iteration, and we deliver one that has the hands crossed in front. They go, okay, yeah, that's better. That's what I had in mind, but I was looking for some color. Okay, no problem, says the folks developing it. Now we go into our next iteration. We deliver this. Notice how we're redefining the scope each time. And here comes the weird part. Here, the customer might say, since these are all potentially shippable, potentially deliverable products, the customer looks at this and goes, hey, you know what? That's enough. That's all I need. Great, thanks, bye. I'll take it. And often it's the developers who are going, whoa, wait a minute. We want to finish. No, that's fine, says the customer. You're done, and just forget about this. Don't need this. Wow. That's what can happen in Agile project management. Now, maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe we go all the way. So is this faster? It may well be faster in terms of getting to this. It may be faster. Is it cheaper? It's cheaper in that I get value along the way, whereas here I basically had all sunk costs. The whole time I'm working on it, I'm paying money, but I don't get anything out of it until the very end. Whereas in this one, I'm paying money, little smaller amounts of money, but I'm getting something out of it as we go along, and I'm getting the ability to adjust it. I'm getting the ability to redo the scope. So the one thing that's certain is at the end of the Agile process, I will end up, I meaning the customer, I will end up with something I really want. Scrum is basically a methodology that uses Agile principles. There are 3 major roles. There's a product owner, development team, and Scrum Master. I don't have time to go into that. This is an overview, if you will, of Scrum, all the different artifacts over here, the various roles here, and then some other types of artifacts there. And those are the things that basically we look at. And this is now, how much would it take to learn this? 2 or 3 day course, and you could be a Scrum Master. Number 6, test-driven development. So first of all, what's the goal? The goal here in DevOps, this is out of an area called extreme programming, or XP. So test-driven development basically is saying I want to automate the deployment of my code. Automate it. I want the whole thing to be automated. And this is where DevOps, people start looking at DevOps and say, wow, that'd be cool. So if you truly want to automate something like testing, so now we're going to automate testing. So I want my code to pass the tests, and I want that to be automated. And if it passes the test, it moves on to the next step. next step in the deployment pipeline. So what I do is I write the test first and then write the code to pass the test. Sounds like cheating. Basically, it's called test-driven development. It's going to be a very small amount of code. It's going to be a fairly simple test, and I'm going to automate the whole process so that I can write a piece of code that will pass the test that I've also written and then moves on, which is fine. So, and there's going to be other tests as it moves on, as we start to combine code together and build the product, all that stuff. But basically, this is a way to speed things up and to allow us to automate deployment, which is what we're really after in the world of DevOps. Business relationship management. This is really a huge topic. We teach a full 3-day course, which is chock full of goodness on business relationship management. But basically, the end result is I am trying, as a BRM, a business relationship manager, I am trying to get the supply and demand sides to work together. So in our world, who's supply? IT. Who's demand? Customer, business. So the idea simply is I either connect those two sides together, I translate the different words that they use and the different priorities and the different value systems that they have. I translate that. I orchestrate. Sometimes I stand back and kind of maneuver and nudge and influence the way they operate. But basically, I make sure that we understand what is available from the supplier, IT. I make sure that the supplier understands what the business priorities really are. So, but the idea, the most important thing is that the BRM does not place itself between IT and the business as another silo. Basically, it's really crucial that it not be another silo, but rather that it focuses on getting the two sides together, talking to each other, collaborating, working together. That's the goal of the BRM. And lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about service agreements. I see that I've gone over time just a little bit. So the key here is how I said earlier that what we're trying to do is deliver value. So what does that value, what does it take the form of? Well, and for the most part, it takes the form of IT creating and delivering a service. So now we're creating this service. So we're saying to the customer, hi, we've worked together. This is an ideal scenario. We've worked together, and therefore I'm going to give you a service, and you're either going to pay me for it or we're going to work that part out as well. But let's sit down for a second and talk through some of the parameters that we've pretty much agreed to. So this is the service I'm going to provide you. This is how fast it's going to be. This is how much I'm going to respond when you have issues. This is the capacity in terms of scalability of the service. This is the way we're going to do X, Y, Z, those types of things. So I'm going to basically write down what I'm going to provide, and then I say, I'm signing it, this is what I'm going to do, says IT, and now the business says, that's what I signed on for, sounds good. So it's a service agreement. So now, usually the question, every time you ask the business or say to the business, I'm going to provide you a service, which in our world of IT is basically a promise. So I promise that I'm going to provide you this service, and I promise that this is how good I'm going to do it. They're going to ask, well, so how good are you going to do it? Oh, I'm going to do it really good. No. Let's write down exactly how good you're going to do it. That's what this service level agreement is. Okay, so now how are we going to pull off internally inside IT? So this, as you see, is an agreement between the IT and the business, but down here, this is all IT folks. So now, how inside IT are we actually going to pull this off? We're not, if we've got a 4-hour window to do X, are we going to wait until at the end of 4 hours and then discover we didn't do it? No, that's not the way it's going to work. It's not going to be able to, we're going to breach our service level if we do that. So this is an internal agreement where we are working out inside IT how we work together in IT. That's what this OLA, in this case, an operational level agreement, is. Okay, like I said, I'm a little over time. Just wanted you all to know that the second part of the DevOps webinar featuring me, now we'll talk about essential practices 9 through 15 is going to be Tuesday, February 27th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, if you need to get hold of me, here you go. There's my name, there's my email, there's my LinkedIn. Feel free to join me on LinkedIn and ask me to connect up. There's my Twitter handle, and there's Pink Elephant. Thanks so much. I appreciate you sticking around the extra few minutes. Thanks a lot.